Well, good morning, River. Good morning, Body. Good morning, online. Thank you for joining us this morning. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Jay. Tim and Don are gone on some family business, so I've been asked to fill in and speak this morning. Good morning, Jared. My message this morning is titled, Finding Faith in the Fog. What you see on my opening slide there is a picture of San Francisco. The Golden Gate Bridge is there. You can see part of it. Can't see all of it. Why? That's because it's encloaked in fog. San Francisco is known for its fog. And interestingly enough, San Francisco is not considered to be the foggiest place in the world. Technical difficulties there. Yeah. San Francisco is not the foggiest place in the world. Interestingly enough, the place that is considered to be the most foggy location on the planet is right here in our country, in Canada. The fishing banks, the Grand Banks off of the coast of New Brunswick, interestingly enough, are considered by the experts to be the foggiest location on the planet, averaging over 200 days a year of fog. Oh my. Diane and I spent some time in the Maritimes a few years back, and we tried driving Cabot Cove, which is on the shores of New Brunswick. And yes, it was foggy that day. So we did make the drive along the coast, but we weren't able to see a whole lot because it was foggy that day. What is our fascination with fog? What is it that intrigues us? Is it the mystery of what is potentially contained inside of it? Is there a bit of a fear factor because of that same unknown? Certainly it's safer for us to stay outside of the fog, where we can see, where things are known. Sometimes when we get into the fog, it closes in on us, and it even invites a sense of claustrophobia. As the men's group, the last study that we did was exactly this. It was Louis Giglio, and God is a perfect Father. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe it was even 3 already, on the last session that we had, Louis posed the question that you see here on screen, and he said this, well, it wasn't a question, but he made this statement saying that cloudy seasons of life are opportunities to trust God's sovereignty. He went on to say this, the enemy is going to tell us that God has let us down again, but when we run into the arms of the Father, we will let go of our fear of the unknown. If we are willing to look at our own lives and ask God where He is, He will reveal Himself to us. Let's take a minute just to pray for a second. Father, as we come before You today in this place, we do not have to invite You here because You already are. This is Your place. You have asked us to come. You have invited us here to fellowship with us. Father, I pray this morning that the message that You placed on my heart is not my words, but Yours. That the ears of the spirits of each and every person that's here is able to hear and receive the word of Your voice speaking today. In Jesus' name. And everybody said? Amen. Faith. We're talking about faith. Hebrews 11 is where I'm focusing, if that's where you want to go. If you have a Bible, if you have a tablet, if you have a Bible on your phone, I'll give you a second here before I start reading, and you can work with me, follow along with me. If you don't, I'm reading from NIV here. I have the entire passage, all 16 verses on screen. Here we go. Hebrews 11, 1 through 16. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Now stop there for a second. I'm not going to stop after every verse, but if you remember absolutely nothing of what I say this morning, remember that. Remember that verse. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. What does assurance mean in that right there? Assurance is a pledge, a declaration, a promise. That's what that means. And for Jed, I'll mention this just specifically for you. The Amplified Bible goes on to say that assurance is divinely guaranteed. So let's look at it that way. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and divinely guaranteed about what we do not see. Let's keep going. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what was seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous. When God spoke well of the offerings, and by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteous, that is keeping with that faith. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. Last little bit. And so, from this one man, as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. Listen to this. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised, as they only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. They were promised these things, but it never came to fulfillment during their lifetime. Admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth, people who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. I've often wondered, I guess not even wondered, I used to go and use the two words trust and faith fairly interchangeably. And I've come to realize that though the words are similar, they're not the same. They're different. Trust is the reliance of the character, ability, strength, or truth of someone or something. Trust is something in which confidence is placed. Faith, on the other hand, is a belief and trust in the loyalty to God. It is the belief of the traditional doctrines of a religion. It is firm belief in something for which there is no proof. It is complete trust. In other words, faith is trust on steroids. Faith is trusting God even though you don't understand his plan. There's an interesting one. And here's some more interesting points. Trust is typically something that is based on past experience. Faith, on the other hand, is a belief that is not based on proof or supportive evidence. And it has been said, which I would agree with, that trust is earned, whereas faith is given. You've all seen that. American $1 bill. They don't typically always have the red oval that I've got on there in the picture. But those words, we all know those words. We've all seen those words. In God we trust. For me, anyways, when it comes to finances, I trust the financial advisor at our local bank with some of my money. I expect on my investment a return. I trust them with that. I'm basing that on past experience. You put an investment in, hopefully you get a return, you don't take a loss, but I'm basing that on past experience. Do I have the faith in that same financial system to put all of my money into there and say, here? Probably not. Different things. I trust them with my money. Do I have faith in them to hold my money? Not necessarily. I think the same could be said with our belief system as Christians. When we say we trust in God, which we just sang about, it's not necessarily the same as saying I have faith in God. It's a higher level. Let's go back to Scripture. I'm going to use the rapid fire approach and stick in the book of Matthew. Faith is a mustard seed. Let's look at Matthew 8, Matthew 8, 5 to 10, the faith of the centurion. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes. I tell that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this. He does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and he said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. This man understood the authority that Jesus had. He knew that all Jesus had to do was say the word. He understood that because he himself, as a military man, understood the process of authority and how that he had faith in it. Therefore, he had faith in what Jesus was saying. Sticking to Matthew 9:22, the woman with the issue of blood. Jesus turned and saw her. Take heart, daughter, he said. Your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed at that moment. A few verses later, in Matthew 9:29, healing the blind man. Then he touched their eyes and he said, according to your faith, let it be done to you. Lastly, in Matthew 15:28, the faith of the Canaanite woman. Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted, and her daughter was healed at that moment. Instances of healing based on faith, all three of them. The woman with blood, if you want to dig deeper into that passage, all she did was touch Jesus' cloak because she believed if she could just simply touch him, just the hem of his garment, that she would be healed. The blind man had complete faith in Jesus. They knew he could do it. And again, the Canaanite woman, not an Israelite, a Canaanite woman who had a demon-possessed daughter, knew that this was the person that could do it. She had faith in Jesus. One last passage from Matthew. Arguably, this is my favorite piece of text regarding faith. And the few verses that I've got here is where Peter walks out on the water with Jesus. Matthew 14, 28 to 31. This is Peter speaking. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and he began to sink, and he cried out, Lord, save me! Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? To me, that speaks faith. You might go and say, how does that speak faith? That speaks lack of faith. He was scorned for it. Jesus said, you have little faith. True. I like to look at it kind of being a glass half full instance, whereas Peter had the faith, the confidence to actually step out onto the boat, or out of the boat. And as long as he was keeping focused on Jesus, his faith was there. He was able to walk on water. What happened when he looked around and he started focusing in on the storm and the waves? No longer had any faith. Now, at best, that faith dropped down to trust. What did I say happens with trust? It's based on past experience. I can't do this. I can't walk on water. There's a storm. I'm going to die. And that's exactly what happened. He was basing his belief system on past experience. It was now trust, no longer faith. My logo there, my little picture, has been faith as small as a mustard seed, which also comes from Matthew. Faith, there are no other kinds. Oh, got one little chuckle. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. Faith as a mustard seed. As I was going through some of this, and as you saw, I've stuck with Matthew. This, jokingly, may have been Paul's favorite condiment. Because when you read Paul's letters in the New Testament, he speaks of faith countlessly in all of his letters. I saw over 40 instances just in Romans alone. So if he's speaking of it that many times in the New Testament, in his writings, I would say there's something to be said here. So I'm not going into all of those instances. That's homework for you guys if you want to dig in this afternoon or later this week. C.H. Spurgeon said that quote right there. To trust God in the light is nothing, but to trust him in the dark, that is faith. I'm going to give you a little glimpse of a personal story here. And I didn't warn her that this was going to happen, but sometimes us Exner boys, when we're speaking in front of the camera, we put our mother into the mix. Today would have been my mom and dad's 57th wedding anniversary. And I'm going to share a little story, not about mom, but about dad. When we were all living at home yet, in our childhood, middle of the night, mom and dad had this nasty habit, I'll say, of during the middle of the night, of not leaving their bedroom door completely open, not closing it completely either, partially closing it. Middle of the night, pitch dark, dad decides he has to go to the bathroom. Not wanting to disturb mom, not wanting to turn the lights on, he gets up out of bed, and as he had done countless times before, is going to go from their bedroom to the bathroom in the dark. He remembers. Door's partially closed. This is what he's doing. Walking with his hands out. He knows that door is there somewhere, and he's getting closer. What he doesn't realize is as he is walking with his arms stretched out like this, that door is coming right between his arms. And at a full pace, with his arms stretched out, he walked directly into that door, caught him flush square on the nose, to which the entire household was awakened to, "Ah!" and a little bit more than that, which I will not disclose to you. We were all awakened. I was yelling, "What's going on? What's happening?" Mom said, "Nothing. Go back to bed. Go back to sleep. Don't worry about it." Okay. Next morning at the breakfast table, when we saw Dad, bruised and bloodied nose, partially blackened eyes, again, what happened? None of your business what happened. That's what happened. The point of my story is, again, Dad trusted that he knew what he was doing. He trusted that he knew where he was going based on past experience. He had done this before. He had walked around that house in the dark, never had a problem before. However, he didn't have complete faith in the system because he had his hands out. If that goes and makes any bit of a difference to you as the difference between trust and faith, but I thought it fit in quite nicely. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Right there. Those are the 5 physical senses that each and every one of us have as created beings. Taste, touch, smell, hearing, sight. Out of those 5, I'm not going to ask you to yell it out, out of those 5, if you had to give one up, which one would you be able to live without? Think about it for a second. Now, more importantly, which is the one that you could not live without? Which one would you value most highly out of those 5 senses? Think about it for a second. Do you enjoy waking up in the morning and smelling that first cup of coffee? As we were singing the worship this morning, how about listening to music? Is that your most valuable asset in terms of physical senses? How about enjoying a meal, piece of chocolate, taste? The touch, the physical caress of a loved one, the smooth skin of a newborn baby? Or is it something that you see in this physical world, a sunset, starry sky at night? Which of those 5 senses do you hold most valuable? So I'm going to guess that each and every one of you have one of those picked out. I'm not going to ask you to shout it out, but I just want a quick show of hands. Smell. Okay. Who thinks taste is most important? Of course you do. The professional chef in the room, pick me. How about hearing? Being able to listen to music or whatever, birds singing. Touch. A few of you are physical touch people. How about sight? Being able to see. Not surprising. Probably about at least half of the room, probably. An online survey was done, and this is the findings that they came up with. Approximately 75% of the people surveyed said that sight was their most important physical sense. Approximately 15% said hearing, and another 10% said touch. Only 1 person said taste, same as us. And in their survey, not a single individual valued their sense of smell. There was a couple of you in here, but not too many, but there was a couple. I found that interesting, that 3/4 of the people surveyed said that sight was their most important sensory indicator. Why is that? According to science, we perceive up to 80% of our physical world around us by what we see. There's an interesting fact. I think that's probably true. I mean, whether it's 80% or not, I'm not sure, but I would certainly say that a large proportion of what we deal with in the regular world, in the normal world around us, is by the perception of what we see. Why? Because we're we are visually stimulated creatures. Let's look at this. I got a couple of facts for you here that are somewhat staggering. On that nice bright background that is visually stimulating. During the Super Bowl in 2024, a 30-second TV ad cost $7 million US, which generated approximately $635 million for Super Bowl 58, for a single event. Why? Because that many people are locked into their TV watching that event, and the promoters, the advertisers know that there is a market there, and they will pay big dollars for people to be able to see their products associated with that event. Visual stimulation. I'm going to show you one more slide, which is sobering, to say the least, for me. And I trust and I hope that it's not going to be offensive to you, but I thought it was something that really brings the whole situation to light. The porn industry generates more money than the combined revenues of ABC, NBC, and CBS. It also makes more money than the combined revenues of the NFL, NBA, and MLB. Why? What we see. We are visually oriented creatures. Young lady on that slide by the name of Florence Chadwick. I'm going to guess that not many, maybe none of you have heard of this lady before. I'll admit, neither did I. I've been doing one of the books that I've been reading, Eats with Sinners. Florence's story was in this book. I'm going to read the little passage to you about Florence. In 1952, Florence Chadwick attempted to become the first woman to swim from the Catalina Island to the California coastline. So the Catalina Island is offshore from basically Los Angeles, distance of approximately 26 miles from Catalina Island to the California coastline. So Florence in 1952 was attempting to swim between those 2 points. During her swim, she was surrounded by a fleet of small boats prepared to protect her from sharks and rescue her if she got hurt or tired. Gradually, a thick bank of fog settled in on water. Florence was well trained, but the fog disoriented her and made her doubt her ability to reach the coast. After nearly 16 hours in the water, Florence quit and asked to be pulled out. As she sat in the boat, Florence's disappointment grew when she realized she stopped swimming just 1 mile from her destination. A little while later after that, Florence was interviewed by reporters, and they talked about this situation. They said, "Why did you quit?" Here's what she said. "Look, I'm not excusing myself, but if I could have only seen land, I know I would have made it." When the fog moved in on her, her hope, her faith moved out. She became disoriented. She became disheartened. Panic set in. She quit. On a positive note, she continued training, and another 2 years later, she tried it again. This time, fog set in again. But this time, she's dug in, kept swimming, and she made it. Jed, you want to play that music for me, please? Driving in the fog. We've all done it. In this part of the world, it's maybe a little bit more common to, in the winter, go driving in the snowstorm, in a blizzard. but the effect is the same. Limited visibility, can't see. Maybe a little bit of panic sets in, just like Florence. What do you do in that situation? Feel like you're driving inside of a box, closed in, claustrophobic. Generally speaking, all you're doing usually is you might not even have taillights to follow, so you're following the lines on the road, and you can probably only see a couple of car lengths in front of you. What do? Do you stop? Pull over? You might, but I'm going to suggest don't. At that point, you just become a stationary target. You do the opposite? It's no big deal. Set the cruise at 100, just go. Again, you might do that. I'm going to suggest don't. Might be a little bit risky. Here's those two words again. You put your trust in your fellow drivers, believing that they're not stopping, and you keep going. One step at a time. Don't stop. You know that there is a time, a place where the fog will lift, you'll be able to see again. Remember back there on that very first verse in Hebrews? Faith is what? Assurance of what is unseen. Sometimes we don't get the big picture. But we know that there's clearing coming. We know that we're going to be able to get out of that fog. Why? Because God's leading us. That's where the faith comes in. He's the one that's guiding us. He is our GPS. It's no longer a matter of trust, but a matter of faith. Getting a little bit of technical difficulties here. That's okay. This is my closing point here. Martin Luther King Jr. said, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Again, delving into the unknown because we cannot see. You look at that slide right there that's on the wall. You see the general picture of the staircase. How many steps is there? What's at the top of the staircase? Better yet, where is it at the top of the staircase? I don't know. I can't see it. But that's what faith is. You see a portion of it, you step out, and then you step again. A couple of weeks ago, Dave Wells was here, and he was talking to us about walking. What was walking? Do you remember that? Repeatedly doing the same step over and over again. Stepping up, stepping up, stepping up. We as a church, I believe, are being called into that. We're being called to step up onto that staircase. Wherever you are on that staircase, maybe you're at the bottom step, maybe you're somewhere in the middle, maybe you're at the top. If you're at the top, let me know what's there, because I'd be curious. I'm not at the top. But we are being called to level up. As a church, we're being called to level up. Most of you, if not all of you, are aware of what's going on at the Point, that we, as Diane said, have moved into that building about 2 weeks ago. And that is a chance for us as a church, through God's calling, to step out into the community and step up. Rebecca, in the last few weeks, has taken on music and worship as our director. She's admitted to many of us that she never saw that coming. But she trusts God, and she has the faith to believe that He knows what He's doing, and she's stepped up. And the same thing is true for all of us. It was never intended for us, like I said, you're on that staircase somewhere, but it was never intended for us to be placed on a step, whatever step that is, and stay there. That produces stagnation. That produces mold and mildew. And if you know what's been going on in our life at home, resident expert on mold and mildew here lately. We're supposed to be fruitful. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to advance. Take the next step. We were talking in the prayer room earlier this morning in James 2. It references twice, James chapter 2, that faith without works is dead. That it's easy to go and say, I trust. A little harder to say, I have faith. But even if we're able to go and say that we have faith, saying it and doing it are sometimes two different things. Like I showed you with that American $1 bill. They so often, well, not so often, it's on there. In God we trust. That's not the same to say that we have faith. And faith can be a scary thing sometimes because it's unknown. We don't see it. We can't see it with our eyes. And sometimes we get trapped in that fog. And that's all that we can see is this in front of our face and no further. That veil in the temple, that was torn so that we could enter in and accept it. Come into the presence. Receive the gifts that he offers to us. The faith, the reassurance. I trust in God. It's what's playing in the background. If we want to know what's up there on that top rung of the staircase, there's only one way to find out. Take the step. One of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie, absolute time, all time, Field of Dreams. I don't know if it's got anything to do with faith, but the line that comes to me over and over and over again is towards the end of the movie when, can't think of him now. The reporter, at the end of the movie, the players go to leave the ball diamonds and they head out into the cornfields. And they say, hey, do you want to come with us? What was his response? What is out there? He didn't know. But there was only one way to find out. He went. Same with us. One of these days, I'm saying it publicly in front of you and on camera, so I guess I'll have to follow through with it, but one of these days, I'm going to work up enough courage to actually try skydiving. Been on a plane numerous times. Why? Because I'm going somewhere. But I have no fear. Actually, at one point in time, I wanted to be a pilot instead of speaking at the river. I love flying. I do. I've done it numerous times. I trust the pilot that's in that plane. Otherwise, I wouldn't go into the plane in the first place. I've never felt anxious. I've never felt scared about flying. However, don't quite yet, anyways, have the faith in that parachute to take that first step outside. When that door would open, I really don't know if I would have the faith to do it. And like I said, put the faith in that parachute. Trusting the pilot is one thing. Having faith in the silk, something a little different. But that's where we are, you guys. Maybe we're flying to a location that we don't even know where that is. We're all on board. How high do we want to go? And if we're being called to step out, whether it's out of the plane, step up, are we willing to do it? Or do we want to say, nope, 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 nope. I don't know what's out there. It's scary, it's unknown, it's foggy. I can't answer that for you guys. Sometimes I struggle with answering that question just for myself. I've talked to many of you in the last few weeks, and we seem to be going through stuff. Lots of us, on our personal lives, on our spiritual lives. Keep the faith. Trust in that process that Tim's been speaking about for the last number of weeks. Way too often we want it now. We want to see the whole picture now. Trust that process. Have the faith that God knows what He's doing. And have the courage to go and step out with Him and say, I'm here, I'm in. Let's close our eyes. I'm going to pray with you guys. I